Hey everybody, this is Deji.
And Chris.
Welcome to the Lot 1 podcast. On today's episode, we talk with Stephanie Caleb and Franchesca Lantz about producing and starting your own entertainment company. So, let's get into that. Hey everybody, welcome to the Lot 1 podcast. My name is Deji Bancole, and today we have not one, not 8, but 2 guests at the same time. This is gonna be pretty fun. So we have Stephanie and Franchesca, who are a producing dream team, who also founded Ardvella Entertainment. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
So for the people who don't know you at home, do you mind giving us like the quick bio?
Okay. Well, we both come from far, far away from Hollywoodland. She comes from Iowa, and I'll let her get into her. And I come from Louisiana, where at the time they had no film program. So went to LSU and then had to move out to California to go to film school, and then got into the industry the really dirty way by doing 7 terrible internships before they had real laws about internships, where you're basically just treated like an unpaid assistant. I could tell stories for an hour on that, but that's not what this show is about. So we ended up meeting at a place called After Dark Films, which was one of the biggest horror brands in the world at the time. We acquired, developed, distributed about 8 horror films a year under the Horror Fest label. And from there, we went on to create Action Fest, which means we were doing 8 horror films and then an additional 5 action films a year, which the company was only about 25 people.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
And the action films were a lot bigger budget with bigger stars. And then we'd also had, I think that one year when we were doing everything, we also had a very big budget movie with Warner Brothers at the time that took up most of our time. We were handling all of our own marketing, creative advertising, development. We were delivering materials all over the world, and we even did some sales at the time. And then our company launched Cinelou Films, which was a subsidiary of After Dark. And from Cinelou Films, we started doing dramas, prestigious dramas like Cake with Jennifer Aniston. I think you could see the poster behind me. Passion projects for A-list stars who were looking to sort of change what they were known for and make something more, serious, something that meant something to them. And then from there, on top of everything else we were doing, we were also developing and producing those movies, as well as entire awards marketing campaigns and theatrical marketing campaigns, which are very different. And then after that, I left. I was recruited to start Don Key Productions, where we did some higher budget A-list films. We were a production and financier company. So we did The Comeback Trail with Robert De Niro and Morgan Freeman. We did Arkansas with Liam Hemsworth and Vince Vaughn and Wander. Also on the side, I developed with Voyage Media. I'm basically a consultant that takes projects from concept all the way to finished screenplay or television series, fully developed, and then help package that and sell it. So from there, Stephanie and I were always talking about Ardvella as a combination of our 2 companies. Just recently, in the last year or 2, we finally just dropped everything and went all in and met up.
So I came into the film production world kind of a little bit through the back door. I started out in entertainment advertising. I had moved out here and from Iowa, from Des Moines, Iowa, and was working actually at a headhunting agency that I had hired to find me a job. And so in the process of her trying to find me a job, she said, "Do you want to just work here until we do?" And I said yes. She then had to have eye surgery, I think probably my second or third week of working there, and said, can you place a person at this advertising agency? I've already got a stack, this big of resumes. You just need to go through it, and you just need to pick your top 10 and send them in, and then do follow-up interviews. I'm sure you can handle it. So I did. And then at the end of the day, I did all the follow-up interviews. And at the end of the day, I said, I have an 11th person I really want to send in for this position. I think she'd be great. And I sent myself in and I got the job. So obviously when you know what all the answers are to all the questions, it makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, each one of the applicants that I sent in lasted for like 20 minutes, and I lasted for about 2 hours. So the owner of the company came back the next day and she said, did you find anyone for that position? I said, yeah. And she said, well, who is it? And I said, well, and she said, oh, you sent yourself, didn't you? I'm like, yep, but I'm pretty sure I got the job. So maybe you want to call them. So that was entertainment advertising. It was for a company called BD Fox and Friends. I was working for Lucas Arts and Lucas Learning. They also had the CBS account. I got poached about 6 months later to go, and I don't even have a background in marketing, which is also funny. My background was in English literature. So I ended up moving over to a company called BLT and Associates, and they were the largest entertainment advertising company pretty much in the world at that time. Did all the big films, and we still work with all those same agencies that handle all the Marvel and all of Disney and Universal and Sony movies. So we've got the advertising pretty much covered. I was then hired by Courtney Solomon to help him on this film called An American Haunting. And I owned my own print production company as well, so printing billboards and bus shelters and standees and all that fun stuff, posters. He hired me originally to handle all of that for him, and then in turn started using me as a consultant, and then brought me once the film did really well and we started a partnership with Lionsgate. He and I started After Dark Films. So that was kind of my start. I think you got the rest from Franchesca about what After Dark Films was and how we started Cinelou Films and then moved on to creating our own company, Ardvella. But that's really how I got into the industry. It was by launching a studio from scratch with After Dark Films. So I think we did 76, something like that, movies. Either acquired or produced them, and then did all of our own advertising and distribution. So booking theaters, hiring theater bookers, doing the media buys, all of that. So we're very well rounded, Franchesca and I.
Sounds like it. I mean,
that's a journey for both of you.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by the FreeMe app. FreeMe is a crew time card job tracking app designed by film professionals for film professionals to help support the individual crew member. With FreeMe, you can easily see your work history, log your times, automatically calculate your gross wages, and much more.
Wait, but does it calculate overtime and meal penalties? Because sometimes I don't even know how to calculate that.
Yeah, it sure does. Both union and non-union. And when you're done with the job, you can export an invoice within seconds, all on your phone.
That's crazy. Because as a non-union independent contractor, I've always been curious, what if I wanted to charge for a union wage? What if I do become union? So that's really cool. So you're telling me that I don't have to log onto my computer after a 12-hour day and figure out my calculations for my time card?
Nope, you definitely don't. FreeMe does that all right there on the app.
How do I sign up, Deji?
You can get FreeMe now for 25% off the annual price with our code FREEMELOT1. Again, that is FREEME, LOT, the number 1, to get 25% off your annual subscription. Offer valid for the App Store only. That's how you can get it, and hopefully all your problems will be solved. I think, a lot of times when people get into jobs, specific parts of film, it's because they have potentially the personalities for it. Do you feel like each of your personalities sort of like lends itself to doing these specific roles?
Yeah, Stephanie and I are beautifully different in a lot of ways. She, fell into this. I was 4 years old when I told my parents I wanted to move to California and make movies. So we have very different journeys coming up. Stephanie is a social butterfly, and she can sit there and talk to in any meeting for the entire hour if we get stuck with really quiet people. And I could literally, and I'm one of those, I will speak up when there's something to say, people. I can hold the meetings too, but it's so nice to have Stephanie because I can just relax and just let her do all the talking, and I love that. So we complement each other very well. Her background with creative advertising and marketing is way stronger. Maybe I have more experience in development. We have things that, but we're both very capable of holding the other one up when the other one's gone. So because we worked together for so long on the same team, we have actually a lot of the same things, but I think personality wise, she probably loves the creative advertising and posters and trailers more, and I love the development and the production probably the most. But we both
Yeah.
love the other things.
Yeah.
Am I saying that correctly, Stephanie?
Yes, I think so. um, yeah, my coming into production was it was because our company, I guess basically the way that you would think about it is when you go onto a set, when you're creating your own product, eventually someday you're going to have to deliver it to a distribution studio, right? So you have to think about all the different elements, not just in the film, but in how that other studio, let's say you're going to deliver all of your elements to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is going to need certain pieces from you and also the most that you can get for them to be able to market the film. And so I originally was on sets, I think back in 2005, because I was creating all of the marketing materials for each of those films. So doing all the photo shoots, getting really close with all the actors, all the talent, doing all the EPKs and the interviews. And it was because I was on set, because I was delivering to myself. Because we would be distributing the films ourselves and having to market it. So I knew what was needed if we delivered to someone else, and I knew what was needed for me to deliver to myself. So that's how I ended up being on set for all of our films in the beginning, and then it was kind of just a natural progression into becoming a producer and actually kind of we were doing so many films at once. Sometimes we'd be shooting 5 films over literally 5 months in between Baton Rouge and Bulgaria. And there weren't a lot of us, so usually the owner of the company would be in Bulgaria while I was Baton Rouge, and then we'd swap places for the next film, constantly on the road. But it just kind of made sense in both situations. I'd be delivering to us, and we'd be having to market the films ourselves and distribute them ourselves. So why not also be producing them?
And it's important to notice when she was 8 months pregnant, when like hiding her belly, going to
Oh,
Bulgaria to do final shoots.
Yes, I did get in
That's how
trouble with.
dedicated she is.
I did get in trouble with the airline because I kept for about 4 months there. I just said I was like 6 months pregnant, and then finally towards the end, one of the ladies said, "Stephanie, you've been saying you're 6 months pregnant for a very long time. How pregnant are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm giving birth in a week." And she freaked out because they don't allow people that are that pregnant
Yeah,
on planes
fly.
because
Yeah.
if you go into labor, they have to ground the plane. So
yeah.
Yeah.
but I was flying back and forth between Bulgaria and Baton Rouge and LA, and what are you
That's
going
crazy.
to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, workaholic right there. For those who don't know who are listening, what is an EPK?
Oh, it's behind the scenes. So it's kind of everything that you create behind the scenes. So all the interviews, right? So it's part of it is you have to produce those as well because you have to actually work with not only the talent but also their reps to get them to approve all the questions that you're going to be asking them, but then also to work with kind of the first AD on their schedules and being able to pull them away from set during some of their breaks, and possibly dig into their lunchtime, and then obviously setting up the shot. I mean, we did EPKs are, you sit them down in a chair. We were in Calgary overlooking a river, and that's where I wanted to do it because it was this beautiful backdrop, and they have to come sit on a mountain with me while I ask them a bunch of questions about the film, and then they give me a bunch of answers. And then you put together later on everything that we create on set is then kind of edited together later on. sometimes they're bonuses, on the DVD, and a lot of times the interviews and such are used online to promote the film.
And then I have a question.
Oh, but EPK stands for Electronic Press Kit.
There you
Yeah,
go.
Sorry about that.
No worries. When you guys decided to create your own company, was there one of you that was like, oh, this is a great idea, I want to ask the other one? Or was it both of you were like sitting down one night at a bar and you were both like, you know what, let's just create a company ourselves? Like, what's the story behind that? Because I'm very interested. And whose idea was it both? What's going on?
It was never a conversation. We always knew.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We were like, we've worked for a lot of different people, and no names will be mentioned. We actually have a TV show we've developed called Toxic City, just based on toxic work environments. Not anybody we've mentioned so far, of course. So we used to, at one point when things would get really bad, we would just laugh about it, like, really hard. And we were doing a majority of this work, and we always knew, I think, that we needed to have our own company, and we knew we could do it.
Yeah, it was a joint decision, but what you mentioned before, I would say probably not sitting at a bar like one night. I would say probably sitting at multiple bars for many nights and having the conversation. Yeah, we were detoxing from our environment by talking.
Yeah, you were detoxing, toxification. Yeah.
Was there like a breaking point for you, or was it like a slow burn that you're just like, okay, now it's time?
Slow, tedious burn.
Yeah.
Very slow, tedious burn. That's how some toxic work environments are very obvious.
Yeah.
And some are just very slowly in the background, and you can never really quite explain it.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was like the moment that Franchesca left us to go work for another company. And then when she was gone, I thought, well, screw this.
I'm sorry.
We should probably do that thing we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That means that Franchesca, it's all because of you. It's all you take
all
full
because I
credit.
left her.
If you
it
never
was
have
like
left,
a relationship.
yeah.
I had to let her know what it was like, living
without you. Yeah. Stephanie, can you tell us about your role as a EVP of acquisitions, and sort of what does that mean and your responsibilities?
So, well, when we started After Dark Films, like I said, I came into it from more of an advertising and marketing perspective originally. But then right off the bat, I would say probably the first thing that we did was start screening movies. There were only two of us at the time. So this is kind of how I ended up wearing all the hats, and also why Franchesca also wears all the hats. We originally went off to start acquiring movies and just screening a lot of films. So people were sending us their films, and we were picking up the North American rights to these films, and then we were going to distribute under the After Dark banners to do all the creative advertising and marketing and theater booking, et cetera, just like we had with American Haunting. And since there were only two of us, I ended up being the one that screened most of the films and decided which ones we were going to acquire. So I was then head of acquisitions. But we also, during that time, realized that we weren't going to put, $17 million in P&A expenses, which is like prints and advertising, behind a single film. It was just kind of a waste of money. And that's when we came up with the idea to create something called Horror Fest. So it was After Dark Horror Fest. So it was basically distributing 8 films at a time underneath one banner. So putting all the marketing behind the Horror Fest banner, and the marketing, the kind of images and the branding for that, and then fitting 8 films under there, and then having to go reteach all the theaters how to show 8 films over a weekend, back to back. That was the part that we hadn't really anticipated. But that's how I became head of acquisitions, because I was there at the time were only 2 of us, and we were working as if there were 20. And so someone had to screen all the films and decide which ones we felt comfortable actually marketing. So, and since I was the one doing all the marketing, it was pretty easy to decide which ones I thought I could market well and buy those ones. As far as responsibilities go for acquisitions, it was really just outreach, and letting people know that we were open for business, getting them to send us their product, me screening it, and then going back and finding out which territories were available. We only wanted North American rights for the most part. And then the acquisition itself was I would bring in a lawyer and we'd sit and negotiate, and we'd make offers, how much we would pay them for that certain territory. They call it an MG. So it's like a minimum guarantee, a certain amount of money that they get for us to be able to exploit their film, say in North America. And then I'd put back on my advertising hat and start doing the posters and the trailers and whatnot, and hire a theater booker.
I mean, as a business owner, you gotta wear multiple hats, right? Especially starting. Greetings, film enthusiasts. It's Christopher from the Lot One Podcast. Ready for an exclusive pass to our cinematic world? Join our Patreon page for early access, behind-the-scenes content, and a community of fellow film pros and enthusiasts. Your support keeps the reels turning. Head to patreon.com/the Lot One Podcast, and let's make movie magic together. Thanks for being a part of the Lot One Podcast family.
Francesca, can you tell us about your role as a VP of marketing and development?
The funny thing about our titles is we couldn't fit everything in. So while I was also I wanted to add to her acquisitions. We were also traveling the world to different film festivals to find these films.
Yeah.
Which is probably the most fun part about the job.
Yeah.
And the existing to this day trauma that we have for watching some of these horror films that were banned in several countries. And if you can only imagine what these some of these movies that have no home show, I could never talk about it on the internet. So we're still traumatized a little bit from some of these movies. My husband as well, because I had to take my homework home. And he was like, "What job is this?" But we're pretty desensitized now to horror movies. And then, so for marketing and development, development for starters, when I first started in this business, I actually thought development fun. You just read scripts, say what you think, and then make them better. But development is like so much more than that. When you're in charge of development, you're also in charge of finding these scripts, bringing them in. Then you have to worry: am I getting the script directly from the writer, and they're willing to do some rewrites on it, maybe for free, because they want to get their project out there? Or am I getting it from an agency like CAA, where they're immediately going to ask me for the WGA minimum if I want any kind of polish or rewrite? Which, as anyone can know, the WGA is a very, very expensive, especially even more so now. Which rightfully so. We won't get into that, but if you're a smaller company and you have to pay for these things, so we have to find unicorn scripts that are already, good to go here, and then while finding these other scripts that are salvageable and have hope, and then working with those writers to make them better and stronger and more what you need for your company. Like with After Dark, I needed horror films that could be done under a certain budget, and then I needed action films, and with Cinelou, I needed drama films that we could take, to the Oscars or the Golden Globes that had potential like that. So the working with the writers to make the script better is probably the most rewarding part, because you get to see, your thoughts and ideas going into this project. But then there's also packaging, which is a huge part of development. So once you have the script, you need to start packaging the script, and that kind of blurs the line with producing. You have to find a director for the movie so you can get financing, but the financiers want to know who's directing the movie. So you have to kind of bluff a little bit with every party, saying, "Oh yeah, we have this, this, and this," until everything comes together and you have financing, a director, A-list talent, and then you have a greenlit film. And with marketing, it was actually so much fun. She talked about After Dark, so I'll talk about Cinelou, because we were actually our own distribution arm as well. So we had two very different marketing budgets and campaigns. One was the theatrical marketing budget and campaign, where we had to book our own theaters, design theatrical posters, send out the posters to all the theaters, make bids for our trailers to play in theaters, make those theatrical trailers, and do all this, and the one sheets and posters and outdoor advertising. But then we also had a completely different awards campaign budget. So Jennifer Aniston was nominated for Golden Globes, SAG, Critics' Choice Awards, and that doesn't come easily. It is a very serious game. We were lucky enough to work with one of the best, Lisa Taybacks, one of the best awards PR people in the business. I think she's over at Netflix last I heard because they're smart and they took her.
What's her name you said?
Lisa Tayback.
Lisa Tape. Okay.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
But
they call her the Oscar Whisperer.
yes.
Mm.
she's amazing. So we basically had to do a completely different campaign, different trailers, different posters that had quotes from critics, different, like actually getting advertising in like the Hollywood Reporter as opposed to a billboard on PCH. And then we had countless screenings and Q&As with the cast. So we had to fly Jennifer to Toronto. We had to take her to the Santa Barbara Festival. We had to take her to all these different festivals to premiere our movie and to, garner press that way, just to get word of mouth, have all these little mixers. It was so much more work actually just to get the nominations than it was, I think, to put it in the theaters, which
Wow.
is a huge job.
Yeah.
But
I would
it's
imagine Jennifer was probably sick of like constantly seeing
Yes.
her film over and
Yes.
over and over.
But she was
again.
such a good sport, such a
Yeah.
hard worker, such
Yeah.
a nice person to work with.
Yeah.
So we got really lucky. She was just
Yeah,
like, let's do it. Let's go.
There were a lot of Q&As. So I know, I mean, I personally watched her get asked the same question quite a few times. And then obviously there was press too, but the Q&As, they really get down to the nitty gritty of the movie, and she would, she'd be there for the screening in the film and then get up on stage. And I'm a member of the National Arthritis Foundation. I'm on their board, and paired her up with the head of the National Arthritis Foundation. She was because it was the film Cake had a lot to do with chronic pain that she was suffering. So yeah, she really looked at her role from a lot of different perspectives, and answered a lot of questions. And it is a campaign. It's an Oscar campaign, and it's an Academy campaign. So it's very different than, as Franchesca was saying, it's very different than putting something out just commercially and saying, hey, go to the theater and watch our movie.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot more work, a lot more goes into it, planning.
A lot of people don't understand that in just the press tour for award season alone is like a movie in itself, planning and doing all that stuff. And so I feel like in past I've heard that from other people, because again, I haven't experienced it myself, but from other people. And so to hear you guys reinforce it is just like, I can't even wrap my mind around it. Sounds fun, but oh my goodness.
It's fun so long as you're not paying for it.
Yeah.
I do have some questions about, so what does it take to start a company?
Luckily, Stephanie and I had the experience. Stephanie was there from the start of After Dark, and then she and I were very involved when Cinelou was born. So, and then when I went over to Don Key, I already knew from Cinelou, just like she knew from After Dark, like, okay, well, let's get started. Like basics, administrative, emails, websites. This is what we need for a staff. All of that really comes with experience, a lot of experience. But just knowing to sit in a room and have a blank board and be able to just make that list of everything that needs to get done before you can even think about starting, and getting your core infrastructure in place. We need how many people can getting a budget together for starters, knowing how much money you need, and then knowing how much money you have, and then deleting half of the stuff that you need. And then, and then I think the most important part is finding your team. Stephanie and I are sort of unicorns where we could do a little bit of everything. And, we could be at 3 places at once, whether we're on Zoom, in person, or, in Bulgaria right before giving birth, we'll figure it out. But then, finding the rest of the team, like, you can get an assistant, or you can get a coordinator or a manager who can also do marketing decks and has a great insight on screenwriting, and also has good writing skills, so they can write you, press releases and synopses and stuff like that. And then for every role, make sure that they can also wear 3 or 4 hats, and just keep the overhead as low as possible. especially in this industry. And that's sort of how we do it. I'm not even sure if I fully answered the question or just went on a tangent.
Yes, yeah, I think you did cover everything there, Francesca. I mean, one of the things we run a really robust internship program as well, and one of the things that we try to do, and that they kind of get out of coming to work for us, is this same skill of wearing many hats. We're trying to teach them, even though a lot of them are coming in wanting to do development, coverage, and reading scripts. That's what they thought they wanted to do. They are doing all of that, but we also have them very engaged in, you know, social media and actual development of projects, like putting together directors lists and talent lists, and then you know, just kind of learning how to speak to other people that we're working with, whether it's directors and other producers, or and how to do outreach to literature, to lit reps, so that we can, you know, acquire a short story. We've done that, or how to look for IP. So trying to make sure that the people that are kind of coming in after us are coming to eventually work for us, making sure that they also know that there's, you know, when you're a small independent film company like this, it's not like going to work for one of the big studios where everyone's kind of in a pod and does just one thing. You have to really be able to do a little bit of everything yourself and be able to actually teach others how to do that as well, so that everyone's well-rounded.
That's really awesome, because I feel like a lot of internships don't do that. And so, like, you do it, it's like, okay, I learned how to do coverage and stuff, but it's like, that's just like good on you guys for doing that, because I've heard so many horror stories of internships where they feel like they didn't really leave with any knowledge because they were just put in a corner and did grunt work.
I was getting sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
I was going to the president of an unnamed company's house and checking every light bulb weekly because he didn't like to change light bulbs.
That's
Like,
crazy.
that's the kind of stuff they had us do back then. So I think, having done 7 internships myself, I always tell them, look, you can go to a studio if that's your journey. This is what will happen. I will support you. If you come to a smaller company, you're going to get to taste a little bit of everything and see what you really want to do. But it's important for us that they feel educated and involved and get a good experience out of this.
Hey, Deji here from the Lot 1 podcast. Exciting news. You can now join our Patreon family. Get early access, exclusive content, and connect with fellow film industry peeps. Your support keeps the magic alive. So head on over to patreon.com/the Lot 1 podcast. Thanks for being a part of our journey. You both have a lot of experience with this, like starting, like let's say you're starting a new company, but you don't have any resources at all. Like you don't have any money and you don't have, maybe you have a few contacts, but not many. I guess where would you start from, like around
Normally
zero?
people have one or the other.
Yeah.
I see.
Great where we have nothing.
Yeah.
Finding the context is very, very important. I would say the first thing I would suggest is finding the right people to talk to, some mentors. There's plenty of ways to reach out to people. I get reached out to from people, even on LinkedIn, just saying, hey, can I just hop on a call with you and ask you some questions? I get bombarded with messages, but I try to answer as many as I can. Reaching out to people over email, but just talking to people over, like, the more people you talk to, the more people are going to say, I have someone else that you might want to talk to who's actually looking to do this. But then for the financial thing, you have to have, like, exciting news for Ardvella. I won't get too into the details, but we've come up with an amazing business plan that we're very, very proud of. So we're going to be expanding our company. But we've come up with something that we can present, that we just started, I think, last week, presenting to investors, that makes it exciting for them and makes us stand apart. And that's kind of what you have to do, because especially in Southern California, the market's overloaded. All the studios have all the money, and all the investors, even the studios, are looking in Dubai and Africa and other countries and continents just to find the money. So, like, Stephanie and I got creative, and we came up with an amazing business plan that hasn't been done, that's still exciting, that makes the investors feel like they're part of the company. And, it's sexy for them. It's, they get to be a part of the, this exciting industry. They go to red carpet premieres and film festivals and stuff like that. And so far, everyone we've talked to has said, this is so much more exciting than the investment we usually do. We would probably do this for high risk, but y'all have come up with a much more conservative model. And that's kind of what you have to do. If you start from nothing, I would say start with the resources before the money, because you don't really know. You can't go to financiers and say, I don't have resources or knowledge, give me money. But you can go to people and say, look, I'm very serious about this, and I would really appreciate any advice that you can give me.
To add on to that, I would say, I mean, one of the things that we're doing with our model is we've learned how we've come up with a way to put the investors first and to not risk their money in the way that typically film investors' money would be risked. So it's a really smart plan that's kind of finance forward, but also allows us to have all the creative control of these fantastic projects that we're bringing to screen. That being said, we wouldn't have known how to even come up with something like that or put it together if we didn't have this background of, I mean, again, going back to wearing many hats. Franchesca and I both had to do a lot of legal negotiations and then work very, very closely with the legal department. So, and still to this day, when I'm delivering films, I have to go through all the contracts and all the chain of titles and look them back and pretend like I'm a lawyer, even though I'm not. I would recommend to anyone that doesn't have any of these resources or this background to go and get an internship with a smaller company like ours, where you will actually learn all the different aspects of what it takes to put together a small company and how many different hats everyone has to wear and understand what's going to be expected of you moving forward. We were lucky enough that we did that, well, in Francesca's case, twice, and I guess in my case twice as well. So we know how to launch a company. Granted, it was with other people's resources.
Yeah. And that's why that's kind of why I asked the question about having no resources, because I think that's our listeners are going to be are most likely going to be people who don't have that many resources, and so hearing you say that, like focusing on that, figuring out what it is you're going to be offering to both sides. I think you guys are uniquely in the middle, of like financiers and creative talent, like the directors and the filmmakers, and you're taking these things together, orchestrating this master plan, and then and you're executing, so delivering the film to audiences. So you guys are in a very unique position where people are gravitating towards you, hopefully, right? And so, yeah, I think it's kind of cool.
I had like 2 or 3 questions there, and you answered every single one before I even asked them. So
I told you we go off on tangents.
Yeah, no, perfect. I was like, great. I don't have to ask it now.
Those tangents are amazing. We are kind of getting closer to the end, and Chris has a final question he always asks all of our guests.
So important.
Very important question.
Yep. If you had, and I want answers from each of you. If you had
me?
Not you, Deji. If you had one piece of advice to give our listeners, like just a short, like 1-sentence piece of advice, what would that be?
Mine is don't give up, but that's because this industry can be very hard. The people can be really great, or the people can be not so great. And I think you just have to always remember why you sought out to do this in the beginning. And if you hold on to that passion and heart, don't let this industry get you down. There have been times where Stephanie and I felt on top of the world, and times where we felt like a little tiny ant. And that will continue to happen in our career. We will go up and we will go down, but we will never give up on the dream.
My piece of advice that I often give to the interns when they ask me how this is going to sound horrible, but when they ask me how to get started in this business is don't think of Hollywood as actually being in Hollywood. Everyone has this idea that, oh, we have to move to Los Angeles to break into the business, and this is where it's going to get done. I think that having an internship and getting experience with this town is fantastic, but I always tell them, if you want to get yourself on a movie set, move to a state that has really valuable tax incentives. I always tell them to go to Louisiana, actually, since I've shot so many films there. Francesca's from there. I know that they have a really good infrastructure, and I just know that there's a lot of opportunities. It's great to come here and work with an LA company, but and it's whether you do it remotely or you're here in person, that's fantastic to get that experience. But when you want to actually get on the ground and be on a production, I always suggest that you go to a state like Louisiana or Georgia. So we've shot a lot in Georgia as well. I mean, both of those states have fantastic incentives. They've started their own film schools now that are incredible. They already have a built up infrastructure because of those incentives. It's kind of like it's like South California is what I call it. But yeah, that's a good place to go if you really want to get on set and get some beginning experience in this business.
With less competition, right?
With less competition, yeah. Because everyone comes here thinking that that's how you're going to get on a movie set, but that's not necessarily true. And there aren't as many films being shot here as there are in tax incentive heavy locations.
And these states want people. It's like Louisiana just started a whole new educational program. I believe they teamed up with CAA just to boost their infrastructure. So they're looking for passionate new people.
Wow, that's cool. I did not know that at all.
Now you do.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I didn't know before this interview.
Deji's like, bye, and then he leaves.
Yeah, right, yeah. And
really?
there we go. Before you go, can you tell the people where they can find you and where they can find Ardvella?
Oh, LinkedIn. And then we also have a website.
It's super easy. It's ardvellaentertainment.com. So just ARDVELLA entertainment.com.
We have a LinkedIn company and we have individuals. So that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with us.
And then I always say IMDb. Go and just, pull our names or Ardvella Entertainment on IMDb. And then you can actually see a lot of the past films that we've worked on, what our credits are, and who we've worked with, and what companies we've worked for.
If someone's interested in your internship, how should they reach out to you?
There's a email address on our website.
When do you guys normally start looking for your next set of interns?
Like we do it quarterly, so we have 4 internship programs a year usually. So before, like if we're looking for January interns, we'll start looking a couple months earlier.
Yeah, the interns do it for school credit, so it's usually part of their program. A professor will say that we'll just confirm that they're getting school credit for interning with us, and then they usually come on either 2 or 3 days a week, depending on what their schedule allows. But yeah, it is a well-rounded program, and they will learn a lot. We do a lot of Q&As. We do like weekly meetings, weekly kind of just hashing things back and forth. One of the things that I always tell them is that it's their job to tell me what I have to do for the week. So my to-do list is pretty much created by them, which I think is not an experience that you usually get at a big studio, where you get to tell the owners, this is what you have to do now. And I said, okay.
Thank you. So there's a lot more questions. So but we'll save it for the after show. Thank you both so much for coming on the show. Just dropping all of these knowledge bombs.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye. That's a wrap for today's Lot 1 podcast. Huge thanks to our sponsor, FreeMe. Remember to use the discount code FREEMELOT1 for 25% off the annual subscription. Again, discount code is FREE, FREEMELOT, number 1 at checkout for your exclusive deal. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed that episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, and leave a review and share it with your best friend's mom. It really helps us, and it helps others find us. Big shout out to our producer, Mina Vizarian, and our editor, Carlos Luna. If you're not part of our exclusive Patreon community yet, head on over to patreon.com/The Lot One Podcast for early access, bonus content, like the after show, obviously, and much more. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to our incredible Patreon supporters. Your backing makes it so that Chris can have coffee in the morning. It's really great. Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at The Lot One Podcast for behind the scenes content and updates. We're now accepting listener mail, so if you got any questions for our guests or for us, drop us a line because we like answering questions. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about Lot One Productions and all we've got going on, check us out at lot1productions.com. That is LOTproductions.com. Until next time, folks, keep those creative fires burning. Dream big, and remember, the filmmaking journey is a ride worth taking. So, we'll see you next week.